I want to thank you for joining us today at Keys Restaurant. We're overlooking the very stormy Cardiff State Beach. We've gotten caught in the middle of an atmospheric river, so I appreciate y'all coming out today. I'm honored to be joined by these amazing group of women, my colleague, Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez, as well as some of the true pioneers and sports legends who've also become fierce advocates for equality, equity, and inclusion in the sports world, including Patty Paniccia. She's a law professor and co-founder of the International Professional Surfing. Sabrina Brennan, who is the Community for Equity in Women's Surfing, as well as San Mateo Harbor Commissioner, love commissioners. Kim Woozy, founding member of the Women's Skateboarding Alliance, and of course my personal shero, Corey Schumacher, three-time women champion surfer and gender equity advocate for many, many years. We're here to talk about AB 467, Sports Prize Equity Equal Pay for Equal Play measure. It's a really simple bill that addresses a problem with a very long history. So I'm going to go through a little bit through the history, why it's important, and what the bill does. As many of you know, in 2017, the U.S. Open for Surfing, which is the largest professional surfing event in the United States, the female champion won $60,000. Her male counterpart won $100,000. And as we'll hear from other advocates today, people have been fighting for generations for equality, equity, and inclusion in women's sports. And in September 2018, I really want to thank all the people who worked on this. There are people here as well as people all around California and the nation who really went in front and fought for gender equity. In September 2018, the World Surf League became the first U.S.-based sports league and one of the only few international sports leagues to achieve gender equity and prize compensation. And I think fittingly, in that same year, surfing became the official sport of the state of California. And when we look and we hear from Ms. Woozy, it was due to the organized efforts of female skateboarders that the top global professional skateboarding contest advanced towards female skateboarding inclusion and prize money equity. And we have other examples of this. You know, when we look outside of the independent, non-traditional sports world, you know, in 2014 with the World Cup, the Women's Soccer League U.S. team won the World Cup. They received $2 million in prize compensation. The Men's League, they were ousted in the first round, and they received $8 million. So when we look, we see this across all sports, that there's this gender inequity. And I really feel that when we are on California public lands, our laws and our legislation has to reflect our values, and that those values are equity, equality, and inclusion. And so we do have a few bright shining lights. There are people that are organizing events on public lands, like our own local Surfing Madonna, Encinitas Half Marathon. They've always offered pay equity, but those are so few and far between. And we can't forget what that gender disparity means for us and these athletes and the athletes that will come afterwards. So I'm here, I brought my daughter Maya today, and you know, my daughter Maya, in fact my son Mate, and any child in California does not need to tolerate a world of inequality, inequity, and exclusion. And so really what we're doing today is we're advancing in a way that is fair and reasonable, and we're codifying this 2018 decision by the Public Lands Commission and the California Coastal Commission that says on public lands, when you have to pull a permit, you have to offer pay equity and compensation prizes for men and women. It's really that simple. And so when I think about this, I think about why is it important that we're focusing on athletic contests on public lands, right? It's one, it's reflecting our values of Californians. But the second thing is sports are important. They inspire and they build leaders. So if you look, only 4.8% of C-suite executives are women, but 91% of those played a sport. And 61% say that playing sports was one of the reasons that gave them that edge to compete and to be successful in the business world. And so I'm going to stop now and let my other colleagues speak. But when I want to leave on one last comment. when women lead, they lead differently. And I was thinking and reflecting on what's the best way to explain how I, Tasha Boerner Horvath, got here today. And we often use the phrase to stand on the shoulders of giants. But I think that is a very male construct, because when women lead, we raise each other up. So in my mind, these women have done all this hard work for decades and generations, and they've raised this issue up to the point where we can introduce this bill. Lorena is my joint author, and we have 22 plus co-authors, because I had one day to get co-author signatures, and since then a bunch of other people have signed on. So we'll get you the exact number of co-authors if that's important to you. But they have raised us up to the point that we can introduce this legislation and we can see gender equity on public lands. And in doing so, we're raising up the next generation of leaders to have gender equity and not have a world in which they have to fear that they'll be paid less because of their gender. So with that, I'd like to introduce my colleague and fellow champion for equality, equity, and inclusion, Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez.
And super excited when I talked to Corey about this bill and talked to Tasha and Assemblywoman Boerner Horvath about this bill and found she was carrying it. I serve as the chair of the Select Committee on Women in the Workplace. And for the last few years, we've really in California tried to take on these issues of equal pay in the workplace. But so often when we're doing that, we think of traditional workplaces. And we don't think of kind of outside those lines. And so when we're talking about the sports industry, those are outside those lines. And ones that are easily dismissed by our colleagues, dismissed by the media, dismissed by our own notions of what equality means. And so this bill, I think, really opens that up to a whole new level of what a workplace is and what serves as equality. I actually grew up right just north of here, and I spent too many of my days at the Oceanside Harbor beach and watching surf contests and surf productions, and always didn't understand why it seemed like it was a male sport with some women who were doing it kind of on the side. And I knew that these female athletes were awesome, and you could see them, and the great thing is you could watch surfers from the shore and not know if it was a man or a woman. And that just shows you skill at what they face as far as in their compensation package. It's extremely off, and that goes for so many female sports. So I'm excited to be here. We're going to get this passed. We're going to get it signed. I think there's a lot of excitement around that, and I'm just thrilled to be with all of these female pioneers in a field that I wish I could be more excellent in as well.
Thank you. So I'd now like to invite up Patty Paniccia. She is a law professor and co-founder of International Professional Surfing.
Hi. Corey asked me to come and share with you some of the things that the women in early surfing went through and how we got from there to here. I was one of 6 women who surfed on the first pro tour in 1976. Our prize money during those early years was 1/10 of what the men made, even though the contests were often held in the same waves and the same conditions. When Title IX was passed in 1972, women felt empowered and began asking questions like, hey, what about me? Can I have one of those college scholarships too? Title IX, though, applies only to school-funded programs. But with Title IX setting the stage and with Billie Jean stepping out onto the tennis court, we were inspired everywhere. We protested, we met with potential corporate sponsors, we engaged contest promoters, we went to the media telling our story, we formed women's surfing organizations. WISA, Women's International Professional Surfing, a California-based group, started holding its own pro contest and giving real prize money. And I think Jericho Poplar is here today. She was one of WISA's founders. The Hawaii Women's Surfing Hui, to which I belonged, held qualifying contests for the first time. So as they were adding women's divisions to the North Shore contests in Hawaii, there was a fair way to choose them instead of choosing someone who looked good in their bikini. Women from Australia and places all over the world began doing the same thing. I went on to form IPS Women's Division and that was the first world tour, and that morphed into today's WSL, but not before Debbie Beecham came along and picked it up after I went away to law school and as ASP, and that morphed into today's WSL. Debbie Beecham took it over. Not only did she do an awesome job as an administrator, she became world champion in 1982. I'm not speaking here for myself, but for so many other generations of women who have successively chipped away at the prejudice, the lack of opportunity, the lack of regard, the sometimes ridicule, and the overall second-class status that we were given as athletes. Once, in response to a newspaper article in which I desperately asked for sponsors, the only answer I got was from a company called Candy Pants, edible underwear. I said no. And I'll never forget the very first question that a reporter asked us on tour. Have you ever surfed naked? When we arrived at our first pro contest, we met with the contest sponsors and they said to us, gee, we didn't think you'd really show up. So we don't have any prize money for you, but we have a solution. We're going to hold a raffle, and the winner will make prize money from it, and the winner will get his choice of a date with any one of you he desires. Such was our culture. We said no. I still hear rumblings today about women surfers not deserving equal pay because, quote, they don't surf as well, because sponsors don't pay as much for them. So I want to finish by sharing what a federal court said in the leading Title IX case when universities didn't want to offer equal scholarships to men and women because they said it wasn't fair to the men since there was not a lot of interest and ability in the women. The court disagreed and said, interest and ability rarely develop in a vacuum. They evolve as a function of opportunity and experience. This law will finally give those women who came after us those opportunities and experience they need and deserve, because this law will change everything, at least in California. But then California always leads the way, so why not now? And why not with all those women in our state legislature and other supporters breathing life into it? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. In 2015, I advocated for the inclusion of women in the Mavericks Big Wave Surf Competition and persuaded the California Coastal Commission to require that women athletes be included. Building on my success at Mavericks, I co-founded the Committee for Equity in Women's Surfing and led the charge for global equal pay in professional surfing. I've made numerous remarks, written letters, and given presentations at California Coastal Commission hearings and State Land Commission hearings. In 2018, I successfully advocated for gender pay parity. My work is the subject of 2 documentary films and hundreds of news stories, including the New York Times feature published this past Sunday entitled "The Fight for Gender Equality in One of the World's Most Dangerous Sports on Earth." The Committee for Equity in Women's Surfing is pleased to support Assembly Bill 467. Increasing the number of events and the number of awards for women, as well as offering equal prize money, is the only way to achieve meaningful equity in competitive surfing. Gender-based discrimination in pro surfing, one sec. First caught my attention in 1999 when Jeff Clark founded the Mavericks Big Wave Surf Competition in Half Moon Bay. The event was named Men Who Ride Mountains. Now it's 2 decades later and women athletes have still not had an opportunity to compete in the Mavericks Surf Contest. However, that will change when the next event is held. Let me provide a little background. Women big wave surfers ride 25 to 68-foot waves at the most dangerous spots on Earth. The largest wave ever surfed by a woman is the height of a 7-story building. In 2015, I asked the Coastal Commission to require that women be allowed to compete in the Mavericks Surf Contest. My request was supported in a 7-4 vote. That success got the attention of professional big wave surfers Bianca Valenti, Paige Alms, Kayala Kennelly, and Andrea Mahler. Together, we formed the Committee for Equity in Women's Surfing with founding counsel Karen Tynan. In 2016, Paige Alms made history as the first women's big wave champion at the Pe'ahi in Hawaii. The WSL paid Alms $15,000 in prize money, and they paid the men's division winner $25,000. In October 2017, Alms successfully defended her title and again was paid 40% less money than a man. Last summer, San Francisco big wave surfer Bianca Valenti made history as the first women's big wave champion in Latin America at the Puerto Escondido Cup. The WSL paid Valenti 75% less than her male counterpart, surfing the same wave on the same day. Last summer, the Committee for Equity in Women's Surfing met with the World Surf League in Redwood City and presented a proposal for equal prize money. We told the WSL to end gender-based discrimination. CEO Sophie Goldschmidt said no and threatened to cancel the Maverick Surf competition rather than pay women equally. What did we do? Back down? Accept less? No, we stood our ground and went back to the Coastal Commission and demanded equal pay and equal access at Mavericks. We also got help from Betty Yee and Gavin Newsom and the California State Lands Commission staff. Here's what happened next. In September, the WSL announced global equal prize money for every WSL event, including the Mavericks Challenge, which may be held this month or next, depending on surf conditions. 4 women surfers, an activist, a lawyer, and our supporters stood together, united in our demand for equality and pay equity. And here we are today. 2 assembly members have taken an interest in the precedent our work has set, and they are pursuing a gender equity in sports bill. Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Kim Woozy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Woozy, and I've been playing sports for 27 years. Growing up, I played on my school's basketball, lacrosse, water polo, soccer, and track teams. I grew up in a world where I had opportunities to play sports at every stage of my life, from elementary school all the way till college. Through sports, I learned that anything that I wanted to do in life was possible. I am a product of Title IX. Today, I am an entrepreneur, a skateboarder, and a community leader. I am the partner and co-founder of WSA, the Women's Skateboarding Alliance, and we are committed to authentically representing the voice of women's skateboarding for our community of professional and amateur athletes. I'm also the development director for Skate Like a Girl's San Francisco Bay Area chapter, which is a 501c3, and through our free and accessible programs that take place at public skate parks and in schools, we are committed to creating an inclusive community that builds confidence, leadership, and social justice through skateboarding. Created by surfers, skateboarding is more than a sport. It is a way of life, and it provides people of all backgrounds the opportunity to connect, progress, self-express, and even heal. With very little barriers to entry, all you need is your board, a pair of shoes, and some concrete. Skateboarding is a social movement that is expanding around the world. It's one of the few sports where participants learn, interact, engage, and teach each other in a public space and get to interact with people of all different backgrounds, all ages, ethnicities, and genders. In many ways, public skate parks are like a microcosm for society. Skateboarding encourages self-expression and self-advocacy. Currently, youth, girls, and women make up the majority of the ever-growing beginner skateboarding demographic. All of our programs at Skate Like a Girl in the Bay Area are always reaching max capacity. We can barely keep up with the demand. Interest, opportunity, and structures to invite and inspire women to skateboard were not always abundant. In 2005, Cara Beth Burnside, one of the best female skateboarders at the time, took first place at X Games, which is one of the highest levels of competition in our sport. The contest was not televised, and she took home $2,000 for first place. In contrast, the winner of the men's contest brought home $50,000, and the contest was broadcasted on ESPN. Skating on the exact same course, doing the exact same job, CB, Cara Beth Burnside, earned only 4% of her male counterpart, which was barely enough to cover her expenses to get to the contest. The formation of the alliance took place shortly after. CB, along with co-founder Mimi Knoop, rallied some of the world's best skateboarders, including Vanessa Torres, Amy Carone, and Alyssa Steamer, to take action. Inspired by Billie Jean King's stand for gender equity in women's tennis, the skaters threatened to boycott the event. As a result, X Games agreed to a meeting, and 4 years later, they announced equal prize pay for all competitors in both winter and summer X Games. In 2015, the Alliance launched WSA, and we are responsible for organizing the women's skateboarding events for X Games, Dew Tour, and previously Street League Skateboarding. 2 years ago, WSA created and integrated qualifier events into the X Games platform that was previously invite only, opening up the door for up-and-coming talent. This shift and others that came as a result gave women a better opportunity to make a professional career out of skateboarding. There's no question that the work that these courageous women did directly inspired girls around the world to step on a board for the first time. This legislation will create a huge impact on what is possible for the next generation of girls and women. While groups like WSA and Skate Like a Girl will continue to create awareness and empower young girls and women, laws that demand gender equity provide a crucial foundation for our work to be effective. I am honored to stand here today to support this legislation, and I request that we all do our part to support this bill and create a future that we are proud to live into, a future of limitless possibilities for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Corey Schumacher. I'm a city council member right up the way in Carlsbad, and I've been a surfer since I was 5 years old, started competing when I was 8, and I'm extremely honored and proud to be here today with this group of folks to ask for your support and to support myself, AB 467, Equal Pay for Equal Play. I want to thank everyone who made it out today. Weather's not so great, but as surfers, we're used to a little water. So, a special thank you to Kim Woozy and Sabrina Brennan, who flew down to join us from Northern California for this momentous occasion, where we mark a significant stride in the march toward gender equity in sport. Thank you to Debbie Beecham, to Jericho Poplar, to all the folks who have worked over time, like Sherry Crummer. We're talking about such a rich history of surfing women who I wish I had the list of everyone's name to thank today. Everything that has been done, including Patty and her work. The folks who actually represent the living history of surfing. I was born into surfing through a surfing family. On the beach, right behind us, Cardiff Reef is my home. Surfers tend to have waves as homes, not houses. My first competition was actually a WISA competition in 1985 when I was 8 years old. Growing up within the surfing world with aspirations to become a world champion surfer, of which I am 3 times over, that came with a great personal cost to me. As I would later discover, my experience over the course of my 32 years of competing both at an amateur as well as a professional level is shared by female competitive athletes everywhere. You've heard some of those stories today. You've heard about the pay disparities, which are significant. There are thousands of similar stories from girls and women around the world. The majority of the stories of the struggles of female competitive athletes will never be told. For every woman who is standing with us today, there are hundreds more who won't be recorded in the annals of history, whose names have been forgotten. I want to dedicate this moment to them and make it clear that many of these unrecorded histories did not make it into sport history, or in surfing's case, the Encyclopedia of Surfing, because they dared to stand up and speak out about the inequalities and injustices they saw around them. But each of them, in their own way, in their own time, contributed to this moment. Because of the length of time I spent in the midst of competitive surf culture, I observed, participated in, organized, and spearheaded significant waves of change by women in surfing. I did the majority of my gender equity work in surfing from 2008 to 2015. prior to running for elected office in the city of Carlsbad. Significantly, in 2013, immediately preceding the first shift by the newly minted World Surf League toward pay parity and dignified representation of female professional surfers, I launched a viral campaign calling on the top surf brands to end their sexist, objectifying treatment of female surfers. It worked. It was during this time, as I was speaking at international conferences, that I met Kim Woozy, Mimi Knoop, who were both doing similar work within the world of skateboarding. Mimi is right over here. She didn't want to come up. Skateboarders are notorious for not liking the spotlight. But she's done significant work, and I'm proud that you're here today and honored that you would join us. Thank you. I deeply appreciate that everyone here today, including the skateboarders, are here to share the impact of their work through their sister sport. I want to also mention the incredible work that has gone on in women's snowboarding, as they have faced similar challenges in a similar environment. The precedent that was set by Sabrina Brennan, Karen Tynan, Bianca Valenti, Kiela Kennelly, and the other big wave surfers at Mavericks needs to be understood within the context of a long line of actions taken by women in the institution of sports. Surfing was first inspired by stories of other female athletes in more traditional sports like Billie Jean King and tennis, and the resulting wave of change brought by Title IX. My generation, I'm also a product of Title IX, was gifted with growing up with equal access to sports in publicly funded education settings. This mattered. I have known Bianca Valenti and Kiela Kennelly for over 20 years, following along with the strides that they were making in big wave surfing, supporting the recent efforts of the Committee for Equity in Women's Surfing. I saw an opportunity to bring forward to our state legislators the bill concept Assemblymember Tasha Boerner Horvath introduced this week, AB 467. I am so deeply grateful to Assembly members Boerner Horvath and Gonzalez for believing in this bill, for believing that our stories matter, that gender equity in sports is a worthy cause with far-reaching positive social impacts. Women's professional surfing is rooted in the inspiration provided by other sports. It is a fitting full circle that we are here today in support of a bill whose precedent emerged from surfing, California's official sport, that will initiate a wave of change for all other sports.